Our greatest journey is not conquering the mountains, the sea, or space. It's to become fully alive, to have faced adversity and mowed it down, to have stood still in the face of our monsters and watched as they vanished into the ether. It's this journey that calls to the hero within every single one of us, heroes like Charlie Carrel. Charlie Carrel has won 9.5 million playing live poker. He's also won a few million more playing online poker, including 1.2 million for winning the 2017 Scoop main event. And what a stacked final table that was. Carrel also has a popular YouTube channel with more than 38,000 subscribers where he shares his views on poker, life and love for philanthropy. If you want to know how someone on the Asperger spectrum who was bullied and abused as a kid made it to the highest stakes games in the world, then listen to this podcast. Let's find out about the man. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Carrel. Welcome, Charlie Carrel, to the hero's journey. How's life?
Life is it's complex. How's yours?
My life is today a little bit harried. Feeling upbeat though. I had quite a lot of good news today. So
what kind of good news?
Oh, some project that I'm working on is just been working on a TV show kind of thing, and it's just been sold. So that's pretty cool.
Cool, good for you.
You know, so yeah, feeling very good. But I mean, let's talk about that. Let's start there actually, because I think we're going to kind of flip and flap in your hero's journey. We won't go in kind of like a chronological order. Normally, when you speak to people and you say to them, "How you doing?" They normally say,
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you? Yeah. Are you? How aware of you of the kind of like fakeness of human interactions? Does it bother you? Do you see that it has a place in it? Do you prefer to avoid that and go to more deep, meaningful, more people who are just being honest about how they feel? They think about all that kind of stuff.
Good question. I must say that is one of the things that the only time I remember speaking to you is the last time we spoke. I'm sure we had interactions online before, but I couldn't remember a face-to-face. And when we spoke, I was like, wow, you're so insightful and you have so many like creative angles and questions. So to go back to the question, that stands out because not many people have that. And the fact that that is a quality that stands out is, it says a lot. And living in London or living around London at the moment, it really hits home because when I'm in my personal interactions with my close friends, the depth of the conversation is you know, it's the depth of our intellectual and emotional capabilities that we stretch it as far as we can. And then when you have interactions with people in the tube, people don't even like looking at you. And I always try and make eye contact. You know, I'm looking at people anyway, studying people, seeing what reads I can get. It's always kind of fun, but also just trying to like smile at someone because that is the deepest connection you can often get on the tube. But it is very special when you find somebody that smiles back.
Yeah, it always reminds me of my conversations with my mum. So like, because I'm in LA at the moment. So, you know, I'll ring my mum and dad, but I'm not really ringing my mum and dad because I want to talk to my mum and dad. I'm ringing my mum and dad out of some kind of moral sense of duty that child must ring parent to keep connection with granddaughter. And then and part of that is because it's like, hey, mum, how's it going? And it's like, yeah, all right. What you been doing then? Nothing. All right. And then it comes back to me and I feel like I'm talking all the time. But then I think to myself, actually, next time ring her up and say, hey, ma'am, what was you like as a child? So maybe
how did you learn to do that?
What?
How did you learn to dig deeper if your parents weren't like that?
How did I learn to dig deep if my parents weren't like that? I guess one aspect of my parents growing up was they were very they're very different. So my father wouldn't really talk to me about anything. We were just in his way all the time, right? But my mum, she was pretty good. She made you feel comfortable to talk about anything. Although I can't really remember those conversations. So my mum was the type of mum that at age like 13, 14, you have thrush for the first time, you can whap it out, pull back your foreskin and say, "Ma'am, what's that?" And she
Can't speak to this experience, but that's touching.
and she'd be like, "Oh, sit down. Let's have a little chat about what that could possibly be," And like, you'd go to her about the first time someone wants sex, or the first time you want to take drugs or drink or something. So she would talk to me about those kind of things. Then, very interesting point. I guess I've just, I don't know. We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, I think, because of the way that I've gone in my life. So, what was your conversations like with your parents when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, most of my childhoods, I don't remember. I have very, very few memories from my childhoods. It's very repressed emotionally. But the ones that I do remember, I could speak to my mum about any emotional issue, that to the point where she would always be supportive. So like I got really bullied as a kid, and I could always come and speak to her about it. But I don't think she quite had the emotional capacity at the time, because she was going through her own stuff, to be able to really dig deep and understand it. My dad is a very repressed person. He doesn't show his emotions, but you can tell he's quite a depressed person as well. He's extremely intellectual, like very, very intellectual. And I could always speak to him, if I had a question about statistics, or I had a question about calculus or something like that. But when it came to emotions, he was probably not the one.
You don't go to him about foreskin thrush?
Where would I go with foreskin thrush as a kid? Probably go to the internet. So the good thing in my generation is that Google played the parent role pretty well.
I didn't have that. I just thought it was falling off. I just thought it was manky and I had to chop it off or something. I do remember my mum going to the doctor and saying, "Well, the answer could be circumcision." "What's that?" And then she explains, "We're not doing that, Mum.
Just a little bit of genital mutilation that's been normalized by religion."
Yeah, we're not doing that. Anyway, away from my foreskin, back to your childhood. Why was you bullied? What was it that the bullies decided to focus on? What difference did they focus on?
Yeah, it beats me, man. I was super normal, apart from the Aspergers, the bad hair, the bad teeth, the bad smile, the bad way of acting. Didn't know how to make eye contact, didn't know how to walk, didn't know how to talk. Aspergers in general it's a tricky beast to handle. And I was very introverted, very conventionally unattractive, the bottom of the list. And I was a very easy target as well, because I was an extremely non-violent person, and I always have been. And I don't know where that comes from. But just violence is just something I've always just been like, why? So it was a very large combination, as a combination of a very large amount of things. And that lasted throughout most of my childhood, from the age of probably like 5 to 14 or something like that. And then around the age of 12 to 16, I was in the mindset where I really wanted to just recreate myself. I wanted to not be this Aspergic person. I wanted to be charismatic. I wanted to be charming. And happenstance dictated that I was actually quite well formulated to do that, because the defense mechanism that my brain had created against the trauma was to just switch off all my emotions, or at least not let me feel the emotions. So I turned from an Aspergic kid with low empathy to actually quite a sociopathic kid with very low empathy, or zero empathy almost. And I became somebody that was quite manipulative, a huge compulsive liar, and I had a lot of very manipulative and a kind of mental abusey tendencies. And it took me a long time to unravel all of those. It really did. It must have been till the age of like 22 when the last ones were kind of being plucked out.
How does Asperger's affect you? What happens? What's going on in your mind? What is it? Because it's not something that I'm really too au fait with, really.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of kind of idiosyncratic symptoms that you would notice from an Aspergic person. It's on the spectrum of autism, although I kind of don't believe that. But that's how it's described, because you have issues with eye contact. You have issues with conforming socially. your voice is very often monotonous. You know, you speak like this and you don't really understand why that's different. Like I have memories of it. So I used to get bullied for how I walked, and I used to walk a bit like this. You know?
Right, like
My
lurch.
mum was just like, well, why don't you just swing your hands like this? And so I thought she just meant turn my hands around, because she said it in a way that I took it very literally. So I started like this with my hands just swung around. You know? Walking was a tricky one for me. And yeah, I had a lot of obsessions. Like I obsessed about maths. I was obsessed about RuneScape at the time. Shout out to OSRS. There are a lot of Asperger people focus in on a lot of very, very specific things for a long period of time. So yeah, I was very, very good at academics, and I was bullied for that as well. And actually, interestingly enough, managed to grow resentful towards my own intellect when I was a kid. So I actually quashed that. Probably a decent amount less intelligent than I could have been.
Okay, so I mean that's like a lot of examples of like you know, physically and you know, how people will perceive it looking at you. But what's going on in your head while this is all going on? Because I remember when I was a kid getting bullied for being Chinese. I don't remember a lot about being young. I don't know if that's repression or just the fact that I'm 45, but I just remember absolute rage and anger. And unlike you, I just wanted to fight everybody. I just felt sad and lonely and everything. Like, how was it feeling for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can connect to that. I got less angry. I really repressed the anger. But interestingly enough, and given the controversial times that we're going through at the moment, something that is brought up a lot is that, well, people can't relate to what it's like to have racist attacks towards you, unless you've had racist attacks. And it's like, well, in a sense, yes, but in a sense, you got bullied for the way that you looked, and you couldn't change that. You probably got seen in as less attractive. You probably got seen as less funny because of the way that you looked. You maybe got seen as you know, somebody didn't want to be friends with you because of the way that you looked. And I actually had the same experience in a sense, because people didn't want to be friends with me for the way that I looked. People saw me as less funny for the way that I looked. People saw me as less charming for the way that I looked. But to get to your question, it was a confusing time. The way that my mind worked, and the way that a lot of Aspies minds work, is it was completely non-conforming to the point where it was detrimental to a large extent. So I would always be asking questions about things that I was told, where other kids would probably just take it on the chin and be like, oh, I guess that's my opinion now. So I remember being in Sunday school, and they would be telling me like, oh, God loves you, you know, God does this, God does that. And I was like, why does he do that? That doesn't make, well, why wouldn't he do that? And I was like 3, you know, and that really continued for my life up until this point, because my natural brain chemistry was non-conforming. So that meant that I didn't pick up thought patterns. I didn't pick up characteristics from the people above me or the people who are older than me. I questioned everything, but to the point where I then couldn't really grasp what was happening, you know, because I think a lot of what really forms I've never thought this before, so thank you for digging this out of me. I think a lot of what really forms a person in their youth is taking on the opinions of the people who are instructing them, the people who are directing them. And because I didn't do that, the world was just it's a shit show, you know. I didn't understand it at all. It's just this discombobulated mess of sensory overload.
There's a book called The Species of Denial, and it's written by this Australian evolutionary biologist called Jeremy Griffith. And there's a part in his book that he calls Resignation, and I've kind of pinched the idea and applied it to my work in alcoholism. And what he says is, like, we're children and we're all born just pure love. And then as we get to around our teenage years, we start to see that the world wants us to behave and conform and to merge our personalities and our emotions and our belief systems and our worldview to fit the cultural norm. And as a child, we don't want to do that. And part of that cultural norm is drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, blah, 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 like wherever you are. We don't want to do that. And he says that the enlightened ones are the ones who, for whatever reason, find the courage not to go with the flock. But they have tremendously difficult and challenging childhoods. But then when they get older, they really excel. And then the ones like me who conformed, they have easier childhoods. But when they get older, they're fucked because they have no clue. They have no clue who they are, what they're doing, what they've done with their life. And they're like zombies. And he calls it resignation. And you just kind of described it.
You don't seem like somebody that's resigned their identity to the capitalistic structures. You seem like somebody that found their individuality.
I had the need to fit in was like so important to me when I found out that I was half Chinese and I lived in a place where everyone was white. It was so important for me to fit in that I had to fit in. Like, so that was me not going my own route, but there was always a part of me inside that fought against that. But it wasn't until, and it showed in me as I grew up, but it wasn't until I was 35 and I stopped drinking that the fog lifted and I was actually able to start this self-inquiry and introspection.
How old are you now?
45, so like 10 years ago.
Damn, dude, that's the half Chinese blood. You look great.
Yeah, Chinese. Yeah, but when I'm 80, I'll be fucked. I'll look like 890 or something. I'm living in a house with Korean people right now. My in-laws. My father-in-law is 79 and my mother is 75. They just look like fucking my age. It's so sad. My mom and dad are like in their 60s and they look like, they're just about to cop it. Like, it's so funny. It's so funny.
Genetics are fun.
So okay, tough childhood, for sure. But, when you say you get a bit obsessive when, with Asperger's, that's got to help when you find something like poker, right?
Dude, it's the best. Oh, whew, man. I don't know how it is for everyone else because I've no experience. I know how it is for a lot of people because I speak to hundreds and hundreds of micro stakes and small stakes players, and I try and understand their plights and I try and understand the issues that they have. And such a huge one is motivation. Such a huge one is like, oh man, but I want to go out and drink with my friends as well. But when I found poker, I was like, well, this is all I'm going to do for a year. I'm going to play 15 hours a day and it's going to be the best time of my life. And it was. And I would wake up, think about poker, dream about poker as well, get in the shower, be like, oh man, if I check call that and then let the turn, that'd be weird. Maybe that'll work against this part of his range. And I'd always be obsessing about it. And it's been a blessing and a curse, as most things can be, that I lost the ability again to communicate with people whilst that happens, and I lost the ability to even like read as quickly, and loads of little things. I let go of so many friendships because I just disappeared off the face of the earth. And it's less of a polarity now, but it still affects me. Like I just played Scoop. And I was trying to keep up with everything else. I was trying to keep up with politics. I was trying to keep up with my charity. I was trying to keep up with relationships. But as Scoop kind of progressed, and like sleeping pans get a bit off because they're stupid sleeping pans for the poker tournaments. And
when you're doing well,
yeah, if you're doing well, the sleeping pans are even worse. I ended up just being pretty intense with it, and things were starting to slip. So I actually ended my Scoop grind pretty early. I'd good enough success. I was happy with the experience, but I needed to get back to waking up at 8 o'clock and meditating and putting my feet in some grass and being a healthy citizen of the world again.
How old was you when you first found poker then, and how did you find it? What was your gateway? What was your gateway drug?
So I mean, I had an interest in it as a kid. I remember playing on Neopets when I was probably like 11, playing like 5-card draw. Yeah. and it was one of my favorite games. And then I ended up taking no limit hold'em. I have memories of like playing free roll tournaments when I was like 13, 14 and watching it on TV. Like obviously my soul just had intimations that my future was going to be pretty pokery. And then I ended up playing it with my friends as well. And we'd play for like £10 each, and we'd get drunk and we'd, eat pizza, and I always crushed. But then I dropped it until I was 19. And then the person that I was living with, who I was doing school with basically, because I both wanted to go to Oxbridge. We were both studying maths. We were both revising day in, day out. We were both drug dealers together. We were really, you know how it is. He found online poker, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you should try this. Yeah, I made like $3. This is sick." And he was playing like 2NL 9 max or something like that, playing like an absolute nit. So it took him like a week and a half to try and convince me to play it. And I was like, all right, fine. So I put in $15, and the first tournament I played for $1, I won for like $45. I was like, oh my God, that felt great. So I was hooked. I was hooked from that moment. So I had to finish my A-levels, and I managed to keep the balance pretty well in hindsight. I did pretty well in my A-levels, but poker was just, it was in my mind a lot more than maths was.
Let me ask you some questions about that, actually. Got some questions here on money.
Money, huh?
When you first found poker, you say that you won that tournament. What is it about the game that eventually led to a career? Was it the money? Was it the fact that you'd won something? Was it related to suddenly being, like the top dog? Like, was it a status thing? What was it?
I don't think much of it was a status thing. I definitely had intimations of that when I got a bit more successful. But I was always so aware that status was this cliche thing that comes with money, that I was like, I don't want to be that guy. I was always, even though I was quite sociopathic, I was always like, I don't want to be the asshole that everyone knows is an asshole. So, when guys would speak about girls and be like, oh, I want to fuck her, 8 out of 10, I would, 7 out of 10, still fuck it. I was always like, I don't want to be the person who lets sex take over their logic. So I'd go so heavily against the grain, and I did that with status as much as I could, but it's actually really hard. What was the question? What motivated me? It was more of a cold hard calculation, I think. I was like, well, life would be better if I could make a fuck ton of money playing poker than if I tried to make a fuck ton of money. So I don't know if I can swear on the podcast, sorry.
We're past that point.
Sorry about that. A bloody good amount of money, investment banking or something. So I thought I'd just take a year out before I went to university. I always had that safety net knowing I could go to university. And if I always thought, okay, if I can make it in this year, then I'll do it. And if not, then I won't.
Let's ask you some questions about money. What conflicts are created by money in your family?
Family? None.
That was an easy question.
I mean, I can expand, because my mum has always been so good with money. One of the reasons that I have one of the reasons I have a very thin emotional connection with money, is because my mum never let me know that I was poor. She was struggling. She was a single mum. We lived off benefits for a while. She really had a lot of health issues, but she never let me understand. I was Aspergers, so I really didn't get it. She never let me understand that she was stressed about money. So I never got stressed about money. So she's always been really relaxed about it. My dad was good at making money, but very good at spending money as well. And he'd always be quite generous with me with his money when I was younger. So I made a bunch of money, and then I'm just looking after my parents as and when it feels right at the moment.
How does life change, and kind of emotionally more than kind of materialistically, when you start to earn money? So make some really good money. So right now, for example, I don't really have a choice about whether I want to interview Charlie Carrel or not, right? It's like I do want to interview you, but I'm like, I need to do this. I need to make money, right? I'm kind of guessing you don't need to do this. You don't need to play poker. Like, I can't wait to be in that position so I can thrust 100% of my time into charity. and it just seems all exciting. But is it really? Like, what is it?
Yeah,
really?
I mean,
What does it look like over there, Charlie?
I mean, the grass is always greener, huh?
I'm not envious or jealous at all.
I mean, if you look at most rich people and most of the very wealthy people I know, they sweat more about money than the people that don't have money by a long margin. You know, they're the ones sitting and refreshing the cryptocurrency and stock pages, and they're the ones that are worried about people fucking them over. I need to swear less because I'm about to speak publicly about my charity in a month.
I think that might be there's a bit of transference going on here. Let's both agree that we're going to try not to swear between now and then.
Yeah, I'll give $50. I was about to say 100, but I don't know if it's going to be like 100 times. I'll give $50 to a charity of your choice for each time I swear, and we'll count it out.
We'll count it out. Okay, I won't do that because we're having a conversation about how broke ass I am.
So it's definitely. I don't think I'm much happier for having money. I definitely appreciate the freedom that it's given me and the experiences that it's given me. I think that I'm happier for the fact that I've had time to explore myself, and I've had time to find peace in myself and to work with my trauma, and to travel and meet people that could help me with these things and that could help me kind of explore what I wanted to do in the world as well. But I still feel quite a heavy responsibility that I put on myself sometimes. And it's not a rational one, because the best way to interact with the world is to not be harsh on yourself. But I am quite harsh on myself at the moment, because I really do understand the value of money. You know, I speak to a lot of people who are very, very, very poor, like the bottom of the rung of modern society. And I see how far money goes, and I see how much £5 can mean to them, or even 50 pence can mean to them. And being somebody who wants, all I want to do is just help people who are suffering, you know, and bring joy to their lives. It's my life goal. And I get really harsh on myself sometimes if I'm bad with money, or if even in poker sometimes. If I'm just like, oh, man, I should not have done that. I shouldn't have bought into that tournament. That was really stupid. I just punted that off. That was so silly. I'm not stressed about how much money I have, and for myself, because that to me has always just been a number on like points, you know. But I can get a little bit down about how impactful that money that I have or don't have is.
You make an important point there that I don't hear talked about too much, is, you know, actually when you want to work on yourself and work on your mental health and work on your physical health and learn and educate yourself, money comes in quite handy. You know, me and Liza were just talking. I read this book. I actually interviewed him for the Poker podcast, Dr. Will Cole. He wrote The Ketotarian and The Inflammation Spectrum. I'm actually on week 7 of an 8-week elimination diet, trying to get my inflammation down. Right.
Good too. We should speak about that afterwards. I've done a lot on this.
Oh yeah,
I've cured a skin disease that the world said was incurable.
Oh wow, we'll definitely have a chat about that then. And so then I go to his website, and I'm like, okay, so I'll get my blood test results done with him, and I'll get my wife's done, I get my kids done. And then you look at it and you go, oh, that's how much it costs? Okay, I don't have that money. So, you know, that can act as like a driving agent to kind of be motivated to get that money. But wow. And it's not always about, you know, put health before, all this. Sometimes you just can't. So I imagine that is a big help to get like the attention of some really good thought leaders, for example, or really good spiritual coaches that you maybe wouldn't be able to get if you didn't have the money, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the really good people, they don't care if you have money or not. That's the really good thing. But to put yourself out in a catalytic situation where you might run into the right people, that can involve money. I would say that so to cure the skin disorders I had with a multitude of other symptoms, including like brain fog and food intolerances and stuff, I spent tens of thousands of dollars speaking to the best scientists, the best holistic coaches, the best shamans, all of these different things. And the only information that I found that truly worked and has worked for tens of thousands of other people was near free. And I really do find that the best people who have the best intentions and the best answers tend to want to give away their products for as cheap as they can.
Okay, I have a view on that. Interested in your view on it then. So I have been very fortunate to get a lot of stuff in the world for free or at a reduced price or kind of in a trade kind of relationship. So that proves that point. However, if I wasn't skilled enough in the art of communication and building relationships, and maybe if I didn't have this manipulative streak that just seems to be kind of like part of my foundation, which is just part of who I am in a nice sense and a bad sense at some point, I wouldn't have probably been in those spots. So for example, if you've got somebody who's willing to give his stuff away, if and a million people kind of like dive on this guy or this woman and say, "Come on, give me your stuff," he's got to be selective. So I'm good at kind of getting to the top of those pecking orders to a certain degree. And I look at poker, particularly your ascent to like high stakes poker, and I think to myself, that is like a really important part of being a poker player, to build and foster relationships with the right type of people, so you can get back, with the right guy or girl, lady, woman, man, whatever, get into the right tournaments. Yet you grew up as somebody suffering from Asperger's, kind of like, fucking keep away from me, people. Like, like I'm struggling to like get connected to these people. So I'm interested in your thoughts on my views around the importance of building relationships to get certain stuff, and also if that is true or not, and you can relate it to poker, how you flipped it, because it seemed like it would have been a monumental challenge for you.
Yeah. So I really think that one of the worst aspects of poker is the predatory nature in which some of the professionals conduct themselves. I think the dynamic between professional and recreational can be very pleasant, but it can also be extremely predatory. And I've never once indulged in the mindset of, oh, I'm going to, follow this guy around, or I'm going to try and get in this guy's game, or I'm going to try and make friends with this guy so he can give me money, or I'm going to try and make friends with this guy so he'll stake me. The only person that's ever staked me long term, shout out to Orpin, he and I sat down at a table. I thought he was just another professional, and we just started talking about a history book or something like that. I think he mentioned he was Turkish. I was like, oh, I'm reading about the Ottoman Empire right now, and we just kept in contact like that. And then it turns out he's very rich. So for me, all of the relationships that I've made with recreational players have always been quite organic. I think it's a choice. One can go for the short-term benefits of trying to manipulate people, but I think that is always going to be long-term detrimental to one's mental health and to the way that one interacts with the world. So I think that it's very handy to have that manipulative streak in you. First of all, because you recognize it in other people. It takes a liar to recognize a liar. It takes a manipulator to recognize a manipulator. So I used to have that as well. I used to be extremely manipulative. So I can spot a sociopath at like 50 miles. I can sniff him out, genuinely. There's something in the eyes. I actually did a 6-hour stream today, and I was showing people how people's faces change when they are a certain type of person, kind people, angry people, and everyone was coming to the same conclusions with the same things. And if anyone's curious, Google search before and after photos of war, because it shows what trauma does to somebody's facial structure. It like genuinely their jaws just like grow and stronger, but the eyes become like, and I can see that in a sociopath. There's some kind of disconnect in the way that they stare and the way that they look. And so I do think that what you have, the thing that you mentioned, it is in essence a superpower, but it's a power that you have to be willing to take control of and not utilize for your short-term benefits.
Yeah, it's almost the way I look at. I never used to think I was manipulative until my wife kept saying to me, "You're so fucking manipulative," and then actually it's been levered at me before in a passing kind of like narcissism, right? So then you look at it and you do some work on it and you realize, oh wow, I guess I am in a way a little bit like that. But then you look at it and you think to yourself, Okay, so there's some really good skills that I can take out of this art of manipulation and use in life to, without upsetting anybody, without harming anybody, and then take out the bad aspects of being manipulative. So for me, a good example is, realizing and understanding that you are the sum total of the people you hang around with. So if I hang around with a load of wasters, I'm probably going to be a waster, right? If I hang around with a load of real deep thinkers who want to go places, I'm more likely to be deep thinking and go places. To me, that in itself is a little bit of an art of manipulation, right? So it's like, I'm going to choose my friends, there's the energy transfer. So like, when I go to talk to you or something, I feel this energy and I'm like, oh, I really want to talk to Charlie, but I think there's a really fine line as well between, I really want to talk to Charlie because I love his energy, and I really want to talk to Charlie as well because he's really super successful. And I'm envious of that. And that envy comes from the fact that I want to be super successful, both in his philanthropy work and in just in life. So I want to learn from that. But you wouldn't end up being friends with a Charlie if you was a boring git, right? I'm not surrounded by a lot of friends that I don't like, but are in my life because I've manipulated them. Quite the contrary. You start out by saying, I really want to be friends with this person because I like their energy. And then if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, because it doesn't bond, then it doesn't. But there is definitely a manipulation in there somewhere, I think.
My advice, and please take it or leave it, and I'm not a fucking expert in all right, $50. I'm not an expert in manipulation, or I'm not an expert in psychology, but it feels to me like you might be completely overthinking the art of something that can be quite beyond thought. When you connect with someone, you don't have to be able to label, I'm connecting with this person because of XYZ. It could just be, I'm connecting with this person. Or you don't even need to label that. You just allow it to happen. And that's something that Buddhist practices teach quite well, or Hindu practices or Taoist practices. Because there's something quite defining and constraining about thought. You take this complex blob of a situation and you try and just put it in this little box. It is X. I'm doing it because Y. And for me, one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn is, because I'm such a thinky person instead of I was not really a feely person, is to just let your intuition guide you throughout these situations. And my way of interacting with you, or the way that I've interacted with you, has told me that I don't think you're a manipulative person. Honestly, I don't think you. I think you're more critical of yourself than actually would be concordant to reality. Because I feel like you've put quite a harsh load on yourself, and to be hypercritical of yourself. But I think that a lot of these things might just disappear if the criticism just quietened down a bit.
I'll take that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, actually, because something that's levered at me quite a bit is you're too hard on yourself. Chill out, relax, stop with overthinking things, etc. But I never feel like I'm being too hard on myself. I always feel I'm just vulnerable. I like practicing vulnerability. And when I'm leaning into it, I feel like I'm giving a gift to somebody, and I feel it makes me feel good too, So there's that aspect to it. How do you feel what's your evolutionary journey on vulnerability? Because I can't imagine it's always been easy. And was there a moment when it flipped?
So yeah, that's a great question. So when I was younger, I was taught not to be vulnerable. That I was a very vulnerable child. I was a very soft and loving, happy child, and then that kind of got shoved in my face by people picking on me for years, and that made me harden up and never show any vulnerability, to the point where if you asked me when I was 16, are you okay? I'd laugh. I'd be like, what do you mean okay? Obviously I'm okay. My friends would laugh as well, obviously he's okay. You must be new here. And I would go years without crying, years and years. So when I got into poker, that very non-vulnerable side of me was prevalent, and the vulnerable side was almost non-existent. And it would come out sometimes around girlfriends, specifically only girlfriends, actually. And it really got a tough time. Like every single girlfriend that I had, maybe ever, bar like one or two, has abusive in some way. And that's not to say that I was perfect. You know, back in those days as well, I was manipulative. I cheated. I lied. I did bad things. So it was a mutual thing. But when I did try and show that vulnerable side of me, that's when people would pounce. And I think that in some people, especially abusive people, or people that don't think they're abusive but have some bottled up rage, when they smell vulnerability, that's when they like to pounce without knowing it. You know, they'll start mocking somebody, or they'll start stepping on somebody. So it was very difficult for me to bring my vulnerability forward, but I always saw it as a challenge. I was always like, okay, the hardest thing for me to do right now is be vulnerable. So that's exactly what I want to do, because I want to be somebody that's not scared of doing something. So yeah, I took my vulnerability to girlfriends and to friends, and also publicly as well. And I faced a lot of abuse publicly. I would speak very openly and very vulnerably about a lot of experiences, like a lot of traumatic experiences when I was a child, a lot of difficult experiences I've had recently, and people would be mean. You know, it's the internet, and it pushed me back, and I would get validation when I was being this sociopathic manipulator or this charismatic caricature of myself, and I would get a lot of pain when I was being vulnerable. So I recognized that, and I was like, well, that's probably gonna set me back. But I've always seen it as a challenge, and I feel like I'm at the point now where I can express my vulnerability without risking being hurt by strangers, which is a place I've really only just got to, maybe in the last few months. And yeah, it's a lot more relaxing. So that's kind of been my journey with vulnerability.
You're talking about, thanks for that, by the way. You're talking about trust there. You're talking about trust. So, like, for example, an extreme example is, let's not go on Twitter and open up about. I mean, a good example is right now, isn't it? So, like, if I'm not going to go on Twitter right now and share my feelings about Black Lives Matter. Like, I'm choosing not to be vulnerable there because I don't trust that audience. But I have opened up about my thoughts about Black Lives Matter with my alcohol group, my non-alcohol group, because I do trust that group, you know. So trust is really important, right? How have you worked on that in your life, or does that just come along with the vulnerability for a ride? Like,
yeah, it's a really good point. Like, I did a 6-hour Twitch stream this morning, and I was speaking about Black Lives Matter included, and I was saying, here are my criticisms of the movement, even though I support it in XYZ, I criticize it in ABC. And because it was just me chatting on Twitter, it was people on Twitch, it was just people that wanted to be there to speak to me and to listen to me. And I would listen to them, and we would exchange ideas, and we would exchange vulnerabilities. And I guess it's not a sense of trust, because it's hard to trust people that you don't know, but it's a sense of just being sensitive and cognitive about where you're sharing your vulnerability to. Like, I'm in a place where I'm very strong right now, but I know if I spent just like a week straight on Twitter expressing myself in all these vulnerable ways and getting attacked and being called racist from one side and probably being called alt-right by another side, you know, happens when people have a balanced opinion, then that would probably end up getting to me, and I'd probably end up having a few steps backwards. So it's more of a sense of discernment, I think, than trust. But then there is a sense of trust with people that I'm close to, and that has been difficult for me. And I think I still struggle with trust in some regards. Like, I struggle with trust with say my kind of romantic partner, kind of friend, Hannah, at the moment, and we're deeply in love. She's deeply always kind to me at the moment, but because we had a very rough past where she was quite abusive, then it's still difficult for me to open up to her even though rationally I know that I absolutely can.
That's really interesting, because I was having a conversation with Liza, my wife, a while back, and I said to her, I don't trust you to bring certain things to you anymore, because I don't think you know who I am, right? I remember saying that. And then when I was like introspecting, I was like, hang on a minute, right? What is trust? And then I just went back and go, do you know what? I am going to trust you. And I remember writing about it, like in my non-alcohol group, saying, actually, maybe trust is just a leap of faith, where you just say, okay, I'm going to trust this person and see what happens. Boom, they hurt me. Okay, I'm going to trust this person again, see what happens. Boom, they hurt me again. And then weigh up whether or not these wounds are a part of the human condition and they're just going to happen. You just have to deal with them and get used to it. Or is something much more manipulative and dark going on that you don't want to accept? You need to put boundaries up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that trust has to be done with caution. I don't think that trusting openly to everyone is a wise thing, because then people will take advantage of you. The fact of the matter is that even very good people can still take advantage of you in specific situations. So there might be a good friend of yours that you've known for 15 years, but happens to be in a really hard time, that then asks to borrow money from you. And it's like, well, I trust this person to like look after my cat, and I trust them to look after my kid, but I don't trust them right now in this moment to look after my money, because I can rationally recognize that, or intuitively recognize that this person is struggling with money and might not have the best intentions at this point in time. So I think discernment has to go hand in hand with trust.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely, I agree with that. What else was I going to ask you? There was something else that popped up out of that line of conversation. I'll come back to me another time. What was every movie has this inciting incident. So everything before the inciting incident is just backstory. We just had a bit of backstory there. But then there's this inciting incident. So it's like, oh, that's what the movie's about, right? So like, we're just waiting to see if this actually happens. So in your poker movie, and we'll talk a little bit about whether or not that's your movie right now, right? But in your poker movie, and you're the hero in that, what was the inciting incident where if we was watching it, we would be like, whoa, Charlie's going to try and be a professional poker player. I wonder if he's going to do it. What was that moment?
It was probably, I mean, if I had to choose one, it was probably when I won the Sunday Million. All right, I came second, but I got the most money. I don't know.
That's winning it.
Yeah, I'll call it a win as well. Screw you, D. Diggler.
Yeah. His name was D. Diggler?
The guy that beat me heads up was called D. Diggler, yeah.
You lost to a porn star. You lost to a porn star with a big penis?
Is that a porn star?
Well, not Dirk Diggler. You never heard of Dirk Diggler?
No.
Dirk Diggler is like one of the most famous porn stars ever. He's a male porn star. Yeah, check it out.
You're doing 1,000 days no alcohol. I'm doing 1,000 days no porn.
You're doing 1,000 days. What I'm doing 6 months.
I'm not doing 1,000, but I haven't watched porn in a few years.
I'm doing 6 months no masturbation. Started 2 days ago.
Dude, 6 months no fap. Good for you.
No, yeah. Well,
that's something I've struggled with in the past, masturbation addiction. And these are the kind of things, if anyone watching wants to join the Twitch stream, these are the kind of things we talk about. Men's issues is actually quite a prevalent thing. Because this stuff just doesn't get spoken about mainstream.
Actually, a couple of interviews before yours, I interviewed Shannon Shaw. And I said to Shannon, what's been the biggest challenge in your life? And Shannon was like, my addiction to sex, pornography, masturbation, and how the poker world accentuates that and makes that even more difficult for someone who's like having issues in those areas.
Is that a guy or a girl?
Shannon's a guy. So, and I was like, oh, that is vulnerable. All right, that is vulnerable. Not many poker players talk about that. Like I have cards here on sex, and I never ever ask anybody.
Really, dude?
Well, I think a part
of the lads.
I think a part of it is I think to myself sometimes I hem myself in a little bit and go, well, do people really want to know about sex? But sex is life, right? We shouldn't miss a taboo. But let's just segue to that before we go back to your inciting incident then, because it is interesting. In your experience of going into the poker world, so like when you get there and it's all these shining lights and all that kind of stuff and everything that the poker community is, how does that affect you sexually? What is going on in that area of your life?
So from the ages of birth to 14, I basically had zero people interested in me romantically, which was really a big kick in the teeth, because I was actually quite a sexual child, because I was sexually abused as a kid, or kind of sexually abused as a kid. And that really messes up your sexuality when you're young. So it kind of came early. So it was like a very frustrating era of my life, just having zero people attracted to me. From the ages of 14 or 15 onwards, I've basically always had a girlfriend. I don't know why it was such a dramatic jump from one to the other, but I've been in quite a lot of long-term relationships. So even during the poker times, sometimes I was polyamorous, which I'm not anymore. That was an experimental era of my life. But even during the poker times, I was still in long-term relationships most of the time. So I was sexually active for most of it, and I don't think poker really changed that at all.
Do you talk about your sexual abuse, or is that something to talk about?
Not in detail, because there are members of my family who don't know much about it, and I'm waiting for the right time.
Okay, I understand that completely. I was polyamory. What went on there? I mean, that is definitely something that I have been. I often think about. I think that being in a relationship with one person just seems to completely go against biology. How did it feel? What was it? Forget the good things, because feel what a good thing. What are the bad things? What are the bad things about it? And what are some of the good things that we might not necessarily perceive to be good?
Sorry, my head was kind of lingering on the previous conversation. Did you say that you think it's non-biological to have more than one partner, or to have one partner?
To have one partner.
So that was. So I met a friend, and he introduced me, because he was polyamorous, and he introduced me to polyamory. And at first I was like, I don't really like that. It feels kind of wrong. But he had a very solid argument for it. He was a very rational person, and I was a very rational person, and I wasn't a very emotional person. And I was like, well, I'll try it out. Like it made sense that, if you can't get all of your needs met from one person, what's the point? There's not just one person that's going to be absolutely perfect for you. So why not spread yourself out, deal with the jealousy? They can deal with their jealousy. It made sense at the time. And looking back, that was really me thinking with my head. Whereas now I've learned to think with my heart and feel what's right for me, instead of try and force what's right for me just from thinking about it. So the good sides about it is that it was very relaxed. It was exciting. You got to meet a lot of people. When you're in a committed relationship, interactions with people that you could be attracted to suddenly become a bit dampened. You have to control yourself. You can't step over certain lines. You can't flirt in a certain way. And because that would be kind of disrespecting the integrity of the relationship that you're in. Whereas when you're polyamorous, that isn't there. It's uncapped. So that was a really good side of it. The detrimental side is kind of the obvious one. People get very insecure and very jealous very quickly. Not everyone. And I was not a very insecure and jealous person in general. But what I found out is that so I'd be polyamorous, and when I found somebody that I'd fell in love with, then I just wanted to be monogamous with them. I was like, well, I don't want anyone else. So that happened a couple of times, and I just never went back into polyamory after meeting Hannah.
So we're into mahogany now, then.
Mahogany.
I always get those two. I always get those two mixed up. For years and years, I thought destitute was a male prostitute as well. Honestly, it's funny. It's funny how you do these things. It's that time of the show to remind you that if it wasn't for the support of Run It Once Poker, you wouldn't be listening to Charlie Carrel's life story. So let's give him a shout out. Rio Poker is an online poker room for players, created by players. And if that appeals to you, then head to once.run/hero play today, and you can pick up a 100% welcome bonus up to a ceiling of $600. €100. There are two elements to this deposit bonus that excites me. First, it never expires as long as you play one hand every 30 days. And second, all of your deposits during your first 30 days count towards a bonus. So remember that URL, folks, want.run/hero play. If you want to be the best, then it's not a bad strategy to learn from the best. And this is where Run It Once's training site has your back. If you sign up today, and you will receive 2 new training videos daily, plus 3 elite videos, including one from the Sir Alex Ferguson of poker himself, Mr. Philip Galfond. And the link you're looking for this one is once.run/hero learn. That is once.run/hero learn. Now, right back into the conversation with that man, Charlie Carrel. I actually I gave up watching porn for, I'm not good at keeping count, maybe 2-3 years. And then I started up again, just...
relapsed.
No, it wasn't a relapse. It was a conscious decision after I interviewed a couple of sex therapists, actually. Mm-hmm. And this one sex therapist, I was asking the sex therapist lots of questions about it, and she was just like, it just sounds to me like you're a really horny dude that's not getting any of it. So as long as you use it, sensibly, then you'd be okay. And I think I was just...
I feel like that might be a case of when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Maybe.
Everything looks like a sex problem.
I think I was looking for an excuse anyway, but
I don't think porn is good for the mindset.
Yeah, what is your reasons for giving it the thumbs down?
Yeah, I think that sex can be whatever you want. I don't think it's an immoral act to watch porn, and I don't tell people, hey, don't watch porn. But my reason for it is that I think sex can be an emotional and connected act, and there can almost be a sense of sacred profundity behind it, or it can be an absolutely disconnected act, just like the dopamine rush of eating a nice burger might give you. And for me, I've always been drawn to the emotional connection. But I did watch porn, but I got rinsed on this online once for mentioning it in another podcast, but I only have watched it for the beginning. Like, I loved the build up and the tension, things like that. And like the taboo and shouldn't be doing this and things like that. But I realized that I was drawn to porn when I wasn't feeling good about myself. And it's still the case now. Like, there are softer versions of porn. And I find myself, if I'm in a pit of despair or depression, which doesn't happen too often, but can happen every now and again, then my reaction would be to like go on my phone, either go on a dating website to get some kind of validation or excitement from speaking to a person, or to go on Instagram and fantasize about meeting one of these people that are on Instagram. And that used to manifest in me reaching out to people, having a relationship with someone and kind of breaking their heart sometimes, or reaching out to ex-girlfriends and hurting them. But now I control it to the point where I don't actually speak to anyone if I do it. So I do think that people watching porn, it can just be a habit. It can be a conscious choice that they justify it. But I think very, very often it's a manifestation of people's lack of self-worth. It's somebody wanting to disconnect from the world because they feel crap. $100.
It's crap a swear word. For the sake of philanthropy, we will say it is. Oh, actually, I tell you what, we could put this money towards. Actually, Charlie, I don't obviously have a charity. I'm a for-profit organization, but we have people come to us who can't afford our services, right? And we don't give things away for free anymore. We have a lot of free stuff, but we don't give stuff away for free, and that's because it has detrimental impact on their ability to get the job done and cut alcohol. So I do have somebody who wants some help, and you can help them out. Maybe let's see if I can get you swearing a little more.
Absolutely, I'll try and swear a bit fucking more for him.
Yeah, 150. I like it. So. Okay, we'll park up porn. We might get back to that a little bit later on. Just go back to your inciting incident. So you win the Sunday Million. How did it feel? And at what point was you like, I think I want to be a professional poker player. And did you ever refuse the call? So was there a time where you went for it, but kind of stopped, like, you know?
No, there was never a time where I stopped. As soon as I decided that I wanted to try it, then I was 100% in. And I made a lot of other parts of my life kind of quashed because of that. And I made a lot of sacrifice in the rest of my life. But when I won the Sunday Million, I remember my mum came in and she was like, "How was your poker? How have you done?" It was like 8 a.m. And I was like, "I just won 200K. She's like, huh? And I was expecting more of a reaction, but some weird emotional things I won't get into. I was absolutely exhausted. I hadn't slept that night or the night before, maybe like a couple of hours the night before. So I was really just pooped. And it didn't really feel that good in general. Like winning has never felt amazing. It's felt really good sometimes. In fact, I take that back. Winning the scoops just now has felt amazing. Like I really started connecting in with how special it is to have that much money, which is essentially just energy or potential energy that you can then reify into doing good things in the world. But back then I just saw it as points, so it wasn't so exciting. But what I did with the money was extremely exciting, which was I always said, if I win a big tournament, I'm going to take my friends to Amsterdam. So I took my friends to Amsterdam. There were 15 of us, including people that I'd met in that last year online, like people part of the group. That's where I met my good friend Ben for the first time, and a bunch of my friends from home. And we went to a very posh hotel in Amsterdam called the Conservatorium, hanging around with all of these people in their suits and ties and stuff. And we were just straight up to the penthouse suite in our trackies and in our harem pants, ordering milkshakes and caviar for 3 days straight, and every day just took a lot of psilocybin mushrooms. The best time of all of our lives. It was absolutely phenomenal. Nothing went wrong. Nothing like smashed. It was so perfect. It was weirdly perfect. So yeah, that really did mark a new era of my life. And after that, I moved out. I was living with my grandma, and sometimes my mum was there as well. And then I just started traveling, and until I moved in with Ben, and then we started traveling together as well.
I guess that's the difference between like psilocybin and mushrooms and milkshakes and alcohol.
Yeah,
I think it could have been a lot different experience. What is your views on drugs and substance abuse?
No, man, they're deep. I've had a lot of experiences. I'm 100% sober now, maybe the odd drink. But I've learned some very intensely metaphysical things about psychedelics and other drugs as well that I've experienced, and I've learned through speaking to experts that there's a lot of dangers that the modern science community does not know about. And I truly believe that unless somebody is completely trained with these psychedelic drugs, these plant medicines, or LSD, which it's not natural. I'm not big on that. Used to be. I think that it's to steal a phrase from my compatriot Philip Gruesome. It's like babies playing with fire. I don't think he used it in this context, but I really like that. There are a lot of dangers lurking in the psychedelic realms, and there are a lot of dangers behind it. And I gave very specific advice to a couple of people, in fact, to a lot of people, but a couple of people really stick out in my memory. And the advice was, and it sounds crazy to people who are more like atheist, rationalist, materialist kind of people. The advice was, say it now, when you're in a psychedelic experience and you hear a voice or you feel a presence and it feels like it's external to you, or maybe it feels like it's internal, but it's like, hey, can I get in your head? You have to set the intention. I learned this from shamans. I learned this from metaphysicists all around the world. People say the same thing. You have to set the intention. No. And the two people who I know who didn't set that intention after I gave them this advice, one of them, completely atheist guy, very skeptical guy, his first ever shroom experience, didn't listen to me about the dose. ended up pacing up and down his kitchen, holding a knife, saying, I could do it. I could do it. And in his head, he was being told to stab his girlfriend, whom he loved very deeply. And he was very close to doing it. And I think if she didn't keep her shit, $200, then I think that he could have ended up doing it. Secondly, somebody reached out, and I won't say names, keep the anonymity. And he asked me about psychedelics because he was planning on taking them. And I was like, my advice is don't take them. But if you do take them, do this. And to cut a long story short, he ended up stabbing himself 16 times and to death. And his girlfriend reached out to me saying, like, this is what happens. And I had that chat log looking back being like, damn it, man. And I'm very convinced that phenomena, whether one would call it psychological phenomenon, whether somebody would call it psychological or metaphysical, whether it's interacting with someone's psyche or somebody's something deeper than that, it's very real. And I do think this is one of a few different dangers that come with psychedelic drugs. Rest of drugs, I think they're more for disconnecting than connecting. Psychedelics, I think, at least have good uses. There's a lot of benefits as well. But I think other drugs are usually they're terrible for your body. They're really bad for your mindset. Then they're really just for like short term over long term.
I grew up in Ogmore Vale, which is like a real kind of provincial kind of little valley in South Wales, and very few people get murdered, right? I can remember one a decade or something. And one of those was a load of kids getting high on some kind of psychedelic and taking a knife to one of them and just, not stopping. Very related to the movie Scream at the time, I remember. So yeah, I was very young when I took acid, and every single one of my trips, all two of them, were like really bad. So now whenever it's thrust upon me about whether I go to the Peruvian jungle and do ayahuasca, I just kind of shit myself. So I'm not really kind of like wanting to do it. But did you ever take drugs to improve your poker game? Oh
man, which ones didn't I take?
So tell me a little bit about that then, and how prevalent is it in the poker world?
Less prevalent than I expected it, honestly. I don't know how it is when people are playing online, and it's more of a thing in America because they have Adderall, things like that.
They have it prescribed, right?
Yeah, man, it's mental out there. Adderall, not the drug you want to be using for poker if you do use them. So I used a bunch of those kind of ADHD drugs, as they're called colloquially. Ritalin, Modafinil were pretty good. For it. Ritalin's a bit like speed, so I use speed as well. Speed was actually the best. Before I got into spirituality and meditation, speed was the best I'd ever played poker when I was on speed. I really felt in touch with my intuition in ways that I hadn't been before. But then when I found spirituality and meditation, I managed to find a way that I could keep in my A game, keep in my flow state without taking drugs and without having the ups and downs. I tried microdosing. That was pretty good. And I've seen people have a lot of success with microdosing in poker. Again, wouldn't recommend it. Tried cocaine, was terrible. Tried LSD, was abysmal. Oh my God. Oh man. I just remember getting in a spot on LSD, I think it was LSD. Might have been. I think it was LSD, yeah. And just getting to a river spot, not knowing what the action was, and just trying to work out whether I had top pair or second pair. So I was like, I've got a pair of kings, but I think, is that bigger than a queen? Am I just being sexist?
You definitely should not be taking LSD when you play poker. Then
it's not the one.
even in my very brief history of use of LSD, it's like. So what are you talking about here then? Are you talking about, so like in the field of alcoholism, or not the field of alcoholism, but the kind of philosophy that I teach, is I try to get people to look at value through the long-term lens and not the short-term instant gratification lens, right? And if you can do that, then you can pretty much convince yourself and change your belief system and apply a lot of faith into them. Alcohol provides you no value. Is that what you're talking about with drugs then? Are you saying, yeah, drugs will give you some short-term value in poker, but long-term, that's not the strategy that you want to use, or is it individualistic, this?
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that can stretch across so many different domains and so many different spheres. Like lying, for instance, I used to be a compulsive liar, and in the short term, lying can be quite beneficial, or at least ostensibly beneficial. But in the long term, unless it's in self-defense, you have to lie to protect yourself. I don't think it's ever long-term beneficial, ever. Even white lies, I just don't think they're good. I've thought about this for many, many, many years, and being an ex-compulsive liar, it's something that really was prevalent in my life for a long time. It just causes like this ripple of distrust, even if people aren't consciously aware of it. People are subconsciously aware of it, and they can tell when someone's lying to them. They can tell when someone's not being completely honest with their true selves, even if it's a white lie. So that's another example of long-term over short-term. And I think that is one of the most powerful skills that somebody can have throughout their life is choosing the long-term over the short-term.
We just did. Me and Liza just did the marshmallow test with our 3-year-old daughter Zia. Right? Have you ever heard of the marshmallow?
Like the one and the multiple?
Yeah, right. This is so funny. We screwed up. It would never have stood the test of time in laboratory conditions because my wife kept talking to her, and I was behind the camera going, "Shut the fuck up," because obviously we were like filming it. And I've got to be honest, there's a part of me. This is why when I used to have social media, Charlie, like I'd put a picture of my kid up on Facebook or whatever before I cancelled my Facebook account. And then when I start thinking about, hey, well, why actually do I use social media? And then I'll ask and this is, you say, like I overthink things. Then I'd be like, why did I put that picture of my kid up there? And then it's like, holy shit, I put that up there because I think my kid looks amazing and I want people to say that my kid is amazing, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm stopping using social media, right? So there's a part of me when she was doing the marshmallow test, I was going, don't take it. Next, the first female president of the USA. Watching
your dreams shatter. Which one did you go for?
She waited and took the two marshmallows. Yeah, and to watch her navigate that was really cute because we really push and implore our daughter to feel her emotions. She knows what they are. She tells me to go upstairs and take care of my feelings when I'm bugging her. So I mean, that's just like learning from our parenting and then going, okay, what's really important here? Our child needs to know that it's okay to be angry, that it's okay to be lonely, that it's okay to lose your shit, So to watch it go through that was pretty beautiful. I like that.
That is incredible. Honestly, it's one of the things I look forward to the most is having a child.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You'll really enjoy it, and you'll be a great dad. So you've never refused a call. You won the Sunday Million. You're on your way. So let's say you're Frodo Baggins. You've got your ring. And you head into Mordor. I know it's not very intellectual and deep, this metaphor, but just stay with me.
I love Lord of the Rings, right? Man. I'm engrossed already.
So Frodo's not Frodo. Gandalf's pretty switched on, right? Gandalf looks at Frodo and thinks, he's gonna get eaten. We need a little bit of help. He needs a bit of help. So he gets Boromir, and he gets the beautiful looking guy who would, no, not him. The other guy. Who's the guy that
Aragorn.
Aragorn. I fancy Aragorn so much. So he gets all these guys and they help him get to Mordor, right? So, and these are his mentors. Who were all the mentors in your life that help you get to Mordor?
So there are a couple of spiritual guides that I have currently in my life, which have been irreplaceable. So one of them is called Kathy. I actually did a spiritual masterclass with her just out now. She has changed my life in ways that I couldn't possibly imagine. And she's changed the life of many people around me in ways that I couldn't possibly imagine. She teaches people how to see the beauty in themselves from 1,000 different directions, and she gets to the heart of your problems instantly. Like, I have a very good ability to read people, but it is nowhere near the depth that Kathy can get. And it's a different type of reading, but it's absolutely, I've never met anyone that could do that. So a second person who I'm not actually allowed to name, but she's a Russian spiritual guide, let's call it. She's also been an extremely large staple of stability in my life. She's helped me heal in ways that I didn't think were possible. She's shown me things about the universe and taught me things about the universe which I didn't think existed, and she's shown me with absolute proof. She's taught me things about the way that the world functions, different conspiracy theories which happen to be true. She's shown me proof of those things. So that she was probably the I don't know what she would be in the Lord of the Rings analogy. I guess she would probably be maybe Gimli.
She'd be Gimli.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail of why, but that's really funny to me.
She's got a beard.
No, but she's rough. She's tough. She's one of the toughest people I've ever met. Who else? So I just watched
I hope she's not watching this.
She doesn't speak English. It's fine.
Oh, that's okay.
She might be able to tell what I'm saying anyway. But anyway, so then there are people that I haven't met or haven't met much online that I really look up to and have really helped me. Jordan Peterson's one of them. I really, really respect him as a person. In fact, I just reached out to him today for a specific personal and kind of private reason. Sadhguru. I just watched the interview you had with Philip Gruesome. He mentioned Sadhguru as well. Sadhguru is somebody that I've within the last few months got really, really into. So he's been helping me through a lot. He's an Indian superstar guru. And then there are historical figures as well, which obviously they're not walking with me to Mordor, but they were there in spirit. They might have been the people coming back from the dead, taking over the ship. Writers, for instance, like Dostoevsky, it's been a really, really big influence on me. Yeah, I can't think of too many others. Honestly, a lot of my and Hannah's been genuinely number one by a long margin. She has tested me in ways that I didn't think I could be tested, and I've come out the other side a lot stronger. She challenges me in ways, and she teaches me in ways that she just sees the world in ways that I don't see. She's the yin to my yang. She is the embodiment. When she's in her flow state of divine feminine, she sees the world with curves. She sees the world subtly. She sees the nuances of human behavior, and she's taught me how to compassionately connect with myself, to forgive myself, to love myself. And she's taught me how to compassionately connect with animals and with nature. And she's been the absolute number one catalyst for changing my life.
That was like, you should play that back. That could be a marriage vow. Do you know
I'm not sure. So we're at a stage right now where, honestly, I'm not even sure if we're going to be romantic within the next 3 months, and she's not sure either. And we're both happy. I actually wept tears of joy a couple of weeks ago at the thought of walking her down the aisle, because she wouldn't want her dad to do it, to her new husband. Even though I'm deeply in love with her, I would be so happy for her if she had somebody that made her happy. And even if that wasn't me, that'd be okay.
As somebody who separated from a 20-year relationship and she hates my guts, I find that quite beautiful. That because it's such a waste of a investment of energy and time, and in your case, spirituality as well. I
hope you don't see it as waste, though. I hope you see the 20 years that you spent as a journey that you've learned from. And
I think that going back to what we were saying earlier on about polyamory and should we be like devoted to one person for the rest of our life? I guess for me it boils down to like romanticism, right? So I'm a believer that romanticism is kind of like partly responsible for our kind of like endemic loneliness that everybody has in the world, right? So yeah, I look at it like, we were together for a period of time, and we helped each other get to that stage in our life, and then we needed new people to help us get there. So
what does endemic mean?
Like systemic.
Okay. Yeah.
I nearly had to Google that then. I think, to me, endemic is a word that I've read in a book that I've never looked at.
You've seen it in context and you're just like, I know how to use it.
Yeah. I've never looked up the meaning. I'm pretty sure it's like ubiquitous. It's like it's part of the. Someone's going to tell me in the YouTube clips. When they say, who's this Keanu Reeves lookalike prick who knows nothing about poker, doesn't ask Charlie any poker questions. He's even got endemic wrong. I'm even.
Have you ever been somebody that has got toxic online?
I never got toxic online. I am the recipient of a lot of toxicity. I get very defensive. I have got defensive in the past when I've been accused of stuff.
Oh, me too.
My inner child comes out. I think that the main one for me was it's like I wrote. So I have this thing where I have to make writing interesting to keep me in flow. So I'll always read before I write, and I'll pick out a couple of words or metaphors or phrases that are not in my vocabulary or I like the look of them, and then I'll challenge myself to put them into an article. And I've got like 100 of them in my sidebar, and I just pick 5. And one day I'm writing an article and lynching is in there, this is quite like with Black Lives Matter now, actually. Lynching was in there. And something else was in there as well. I can't remember. And I was writing an article about Kevin Hart in playing on the PokerStars game where I think he started humping. Yeah, he started humping the table. And I was and I think I wrote something like, if anybody else would have eliminated a high stakes poker player and started humping the table, the poker community would have lynched them. And then I had
people call it racially insensitive.
I had 1 million people tweet back how racist I am, like from someone who's suffered from racism all my life, how racist I am.
That's so brutal.
And do you know what I thought? I thought to myself, and then I started defending myself, and I wish I didn't, but it was kind of like,
I did.
Who's the racist? Who's got the issue here? The person who's attached lynching in an article about a black person and hasn't connected the two in a slavery historical kind of reference because it doesn't mean anything to me. Does that just make me ignorant? Does that make me someone from the UK whose that word doesn't really mean anything to me as I'm kind of grown up? Or is it the person who connects the dots and then calls me a racist got a problem? And it's not the person who's got a problem. It's kind of like, what's the culture and the system behind that? So I started trying to defend myself. And then I just thought, what the fuck am I doing? So I never went on Twitter ever again, other than to say,
dude, same here. Different fashionable story. It's different sleeve on the story, but it's the same underbelly of the story.
Yeah.
It's say something that is completely misinterpreted. Try defending myself. Realize that people aren't actually annoyed at what you said; they just want to hate, and then just be like, "Well, I am out of here. Good job, guys."
Yeah, I'm actually learning now, in relational literacy is so important in the world and is it the root of all of our problems that I'm working really hard on trying to be a world-class communicator, whatever that means. So now when me and my wife have an argument, because she's the person I'm in more conflict with, we go for a simple process. What did she say? What did I say next? Did what I say, what I said empathic, respectful, and did I assert myself in the right way and my feelings? And it's always no. And then it's like, how could you readdress that? So in the case of the lynching article, I would have done that completely differently now, and I wouldn't have been defensive, and I would have seen the point of somebody else, apologized and moved on. But
I would not have apologized in this situation. You did nothing wrong. If the story is how you just told it, you did absolutely zero wrong. I think apologizing is just bowing to the crowd.
Yeah, it's not. There's not. I'm not saying I don't have prejudice, and this is what I've been talking about recently in my alcohol group. I think when you grow up, for example, afraid of black people, but you've never met anyone black, that pretty much says there's something wrong with the culture, or for me, the media exposure that you've got from people of color as you grow up, right? And I had no kids in school with me that were black. Yeah, everybody looked at me and called me chink, a gook, a jap, yellow, blah blah blah. So if there was someone black there, I pretty much think some of the same things would have happened. So it's really interesting where all this culture comes from. But anyway, we're kind of like.
No, I mean, I find this fascinating. I've been following the BLM movement really closely, and before that, the general SJW movement as a whole. And I think that it's a spiritual sickness of our time. It's a result of many things going wrong. And I'm not saying that the whole movement is like, I do support a lot of what the Black Lives Matter movement have been doing, and I support some of what the SJW movements have been doing as a whole. But there's a prevalent lack of empathy, or maybe more specifically selective empathy. You know, people want to be empathetic with the oppressed minority that they're sticking up for, but they're having zero empathy for the people that they see as the other, or the bad guys, which is in essence just as discriminatory as the people that they're trying to argue against, or in some instances more.
Yeah.
So I think that the lack of empathy that you had in your situation, it's not that they were being racist per se, it's more that they were just being mean, you know, and that's bad. You know, racism is bad, being mean is bad. And I think that it's a really, it happens all over the place. It happens when people are on the far right end of the political spectrum. It happens when people are on Twitter. It happens when people are on the far left. And I think it's a product of the cogs whirring of the system that we're in. And for me, the goal is for myself and to find a group of people who just want to rise above that, who don't see left versus right, who don't see black versus white. Be aware of these dynamics, be aware of your own biases, but don't think like that. Don't see the world like that. See the world as individuals who are connected with this really underlying mass of consciousness that is beautiful, and find similarities, find where we can empathize with other people and try and do as much good in the world. Whereas a lot of these people, yeah, they might post on social media all the things, they might be a mouthpiece for their movement, they might turn up to a protest, but a lot of them, then they'll go home and they'll be mean to people on Twitter for a day, you know, instead of, you know, volunteering their time for a charity, for instance. Or you know, doing your 1,000 days sober movement, you know, genuinely making big systemic differences. And I think it's a terrible thing. You know, it's terrible that so many people have started equating compassion with shaming people, or equating being a good person with making people feel terrible about themselves,
or feeling that shaming someone is action. Like, that's it. I've done my bit. I just can't leave.
Thank God. I'm so tired of being a good person. I can go back to kicking my dog.
I just called Lee a racist for using the word lynching in an article about a black poker player. He's clearly racist. I just told him it. There's it. I've done my bit for the anti-racism movement. I mean,
you know, I would bet all of my bankroll if you showed that to Kevin Hart and asked, "Are you offended by this?" He'd be like, "What? No."
I know. It was, I know for sure. I mean, one thing you said earlier on, like, that really kind of, I think it's really important here, and a lot of people find it's really controversial, I guess. So let me start with a caveat. Obviously, nobody knows what it's like to be inside the mind and body of somebody else, right? Like, you know, nobody knows that. So there's my caveat. But when people say you have no idea what it's like to be me, you know, I think people can misconstrue empathy and think that empathy is an experience and not a feeling. So it doesn't matter what color you are. If you have grown up experiencing similar emotions and feelings related to very different actions, it's the emotion. So, you know, we have somebody in our group who's had multiple miscarriages. Okay. Well, I have no idea what it's like to lose a child, right? Like, I've never carried a child for 9 months, and I could never feel what that's like. Right, especially physically. I cannot feel what it's like. But I've gone through a divorce, and I've felt the crushing loss of somebody who's been by my side from the age of 14 to 35. And then suddenly I'm not allowed to talk to them anymore or love them. I'm not allowed to see their family. I'm not allowed to love them. And I can't see my son when I want to, because now suddenly he's not my child. He's a Blockbuster videotape that I rent once a fortnight. So I can empathize with how that feels, but I don't know what it's like to be in a miscarriage. And I think there's a bit of element of both in it, but I think
I feel like what you're saying is deeply true, that there's this underpinning common denominator of human suffering, and you don't have to be able to empathize with every single aspect of somebody's experience to still be able to empathize with them. Because I know what it's like to suffer, you know what it's like to suffer. We all have our own different sufferings, and even within, let's say the Black community in North America, everyone's experience of racism is going to be their own personal experiences. Some people may have got bullied. Some people may have got rejected for a bank loan because of their race. Some people may have got attacked by a cop, and they can't empathize with each other fully as well, but they do have a stronger common denominator in comparison to me versus them for that specific thing. But then I might empathize with that person because I got bullied, and it's just this amalgamation of things that are too complex for our minds to even handle. And for people to be able to just put it in these rationalizations of, oh, this group feels this and you feel that because you're not part of that group, I think is absolute nonsense. It's irrational nonsense, and it's founded with very bad intentions, in my opinion. Sorry, my cat's meowing to get in. 1 second.
All right, go get your cat. Yeah. We do need compassion in this as well, because I think something that is missing in all of this is the acceptance that there are 7.5 billion people in this world, and we're all clueless, and we're all kind of wandering around, not got a clue who we are. We don't know shit.
We're babies.
We're trying to figure stuff out. We don't really know left from right. We don't know why we're doing or saying or feeling what we're doing, saying or feeling. We're all like in that same spot. And then something like this comes up, and suddenly what we're doing is we're actually silencing discourse on it, because we're not accepting that we're infallible and that we will say stupid stuff, because we're trying to figure things out. And some of us are verbally expressive when we figure things out, and some of us are internal. I'm a verbally expressive person. So I'm the type of person who go, oh, okay, so when a Black person goes out in LA and a cop car comes along, they've shit themselves. I'm a Chinese person who lives in LA right now, and when I walk outside of my house, I shit myself, right? Like, so if I express something like that, like, I'm going to get pounded. Yeah. Like, you have no idea what, and boom, 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 boom. So I think everyone needs to be a little bit more compassionate and don't kill discourse. Allow it to just be civil, like.
Yeah, something that Jordan Peterson says quite regularly that I really feel is true is that the point of freedom of speech is to be able to say stupid things or wrong things and then work it out from there. If you can't say stupid things, then you're just left with stupid thoughts. So you have to be able to say the stupid things, and people have to be able to respond with understanding instead of with absolute shaming, because then you just won't say it next time.
Yeah. Which is to say, like, it's a stupid comparison, but it's the same in poker, right? You got to make some plays, and you got to figure things out, and some things will go wrong, and some things will work great, and then you'll learn.
It's not a stupid comparison. It's a great comparison. That's exactly right. And when I'm teaching my students, I say, I'm not going to teach you the next step of this thought process, because I want you to figure it out yourself. And if you don't, then you'll have at least made all the mistakes. So then we can add on to it. You'll understand what it's like to make this mistake or this mistake, and you'll understand the pain of losing money because you punted off in this check race.
Right? How important is that? Like, when you were saying about your mentors, you didn't mention any technical mentors, which is really interesting, because one of the feedbacks that I get when I interview poker players is, why didn't you ask him anything about poker? This guy never asked him anything about poker. I think that's partly because I don't really know a lot about poker, so it's not really my thing. But there's also part of me that says, well, there's all these technical, like, this is a Run It Once podcast. Run It Once has a very highly technical training area. And I recently said to Phil, an email came out to me from the training site, and it didn't pimp up these type of interviews. And I said, why not? Like this is life. Like, how can you be a good poker player if you're no good at life? Like, like we want to.
Very true. Very true.
So, but you didn't mention anyone technical. Was that just an oversight, or was there a reason for that?
I mean, it wasn't a conscious reason, but the reason is that I've never really had a poker guru before. The only person I've ever learned poker off is Evan Jarvis from Grips, and I watched his bankroll challenge when I was moving up the stakes, and it was very, very instructive. So shout out to Evan Jarvis. It was definitely accelerating my progress. But apart from that, I've never had a session of coaching, or I had one, and then the coach messaged back saying, I don't think there's anything I can teach you. So not gonna coach you anymore. And interestingly enough, that was actually a session on GTO coaching. I've never learned GTO. I'm the vocal proponent of, when you're learning poker, I think it's very detrimental to be put in these boxes that GTO puts you into. And I think it's better to learn intuitive poker before you learn this. But GTO also has come very intuitively to me. So like the different lines that people take, like every now and again, this is going to sound very arrogant, and I really don't mean it to be. But every now and again, my friend Ben, who runs loads and loads of Pio Solver GTO solutions, he'll be like, oh yeah, Pio Solver takes this line that you were doing like 5 years ago, that no one else was doing. And it would just be because I had an intuition for the game, and it happened to be, in this case, something that would align with what game theory would say. So yeah, I've never really enjoyed learning from other people. Like, I'm learning chess right now, and I'm not getting any coaching. I'm not learning many of the openings, and I love the sensation of working something out for myself. Okay. I absolutely adore that sensation. I think that not everyone can do it. If I were learning dance, I would need a teacher, because I'm not naturally talented at dance, but I am naturally talented at poker. So I can learn it all for myself. And then I think when somebody learns for themselves, it's like you have a few people that when they're learning a new skill of the world or a new skill for themselves, it's like you're hacking your way through a jungle with a machete. You're like cutting down these vines, and one attacks you, like, okay, don't go this way next time. And you try and take the safest path. You have to go, around the river instead of over the river. You have to learn all these different things, and then you can teach people. And then you can be like, oh, hey guys, come back and drag and bring them. Okay, go around this, watch out for that vine, and duck in here and go around the river. And I feel for poker that's what I've done, and that's what I really enjoy doing. But when you are hacking through these vines and you learn everything, that's when you get a deep understanding of the jungle, of the domain that you're trying to be an expert in. That's where you get a deep understanding, because you know what it's like to fall down that pit. So when I'm teaching poker, and this is something that I don't believe the poker world does at all, I don't teach people, hey, this is what you should do in this spot, this is what you should do in this spot, this is what you should do in this spot. I teach people, this is how to think. I'm not going to tell you the next step. Go out and do it yourself, and then come to this next step. Think like this, perhaps. This might be really helpful. A lot of people make this mistake. Maybe stop thinking about where you are in your range, more about what the opponent's range is and how to exploit that, for instance. And I will always try and let them become their own genius. I'll always try and let them manifest that spark of creativity, because I think that's what creates an extraordinary poker player, or an extraordinary something else, a photographer or something like that.
Human being, extraordinary human being. And on that level, every hero story has a villain. The bigger, the badder the villain, the better. We spoke about a few of them anyway. So on your route to being a poker superstar, bearing in mind that kind of like poker is a microcosm of life, who have been your villains along the way, and how have you slayed them, or have you still got villains that are?
Are we talking humans or also non-humans?
It could be anything: humans, corporations, thought processes, beliefs. Yeah. You don't have to turn around like I interviewed someone the other day and go, oh yeah, this high profile person is my villain.
So in poker or in life?
Well, I think they're both connected, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I could do specifically just for poker.
Okay,
I'll do that. So in poker, one of my villains was emotionally connecting with myself again. Like I was a very emotionally disconnected person, and when I emotionally connected, and I actually just heard Philip Grusom say a very similar thing. I had to learn what it was like to be depressed. I had to learn what it was like to be anxious, and I had to learn how to conquer that. And I feel like I've only got to the point now where I can really succeed very consistently in poker without letting my emotions get to me. Whereas before I just didn't have any emotions. So that was definitely one.
Hang on, because that's really interesting. Because the stereotype is poker players don't have any emotions, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did have no emotions, and that was very helpful. I was in essence a sociopath when it came to poker, and in some ways I still am. You know, you actually asked me a question in the last interview that we did, whether I ever have any schadenfreude. I didn't know what it was at the time. And my answer was, well, yeah, in poker. You know, I enjoy winning at poker. I enjoy taking other people's money in poker, which goes kind of contradictory to my morality. You know, I'm taking money of somebody else, but I think to be a successful poker player, you need to be a predator. You need to be a killer. You need to be somebody that wants to win no matter what. Within the confines of the rules. You know, you shouldn't be cheating, you shouldn't be lying or anything like that. But that kind of beastly mindset, I think, is something that a lot of people don't have. And I've had to teach people, be a beast. You know, be so confident that you're the best player at that table. Take advantage of that person. Take that person's dinner money. You know, don't even think about what the repercussions are for that person. And it's a sad fact about the game, I think, but I think that is the best way to approach poker in terms of being a success. I might change my mind on that one though. I'm not 100%.
I mean, it feels very just like sport. You know, it's like, okay, we're preparing to take this, we're preparing to fight or play against this person or this team. What are their weaknesses, and how are we going to exploit them? You know, it just because there's money involved.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a bit darker
it's
when
bit,
it's taken.
Yeah, it's that's all it is. It's because, you know, when we beat the local pub side on a Sunday, it's not really money involved. But when it's poker, and we do know that it you know, there are some people who just play great, and there are other people who really struggle, and when they lose the money, etc. But I get it. What about villain in life then?
I mean, the obvious answer would be people that have been abusive to me, that they've really set me back in a way. But one of the cool things about villains is that you learn skills along the way to conquer them. You know, you learn ways of coping. You learn ways of loving yourself that were very difficult when somebody's being abusive. And you learn to forgive. And I think that all these things, they strengthen somebody. It's like wearing a suit of armor. If you experience trauma, you can either let it bury you into the ground, or you can let it become you and become a stronger, like, extra layer of skin on top of you that gives you extra sensory opportunities in the world. So you can be extra empathetic, or you can be extra kind, or you can understand somebody's suffering deeper, so you get more motivation to want to help them. And there have definitely been people in my childhoods, in poker, in all aspects of my life that have been cruel to me, have been really, really cruel to me. But I'm grateful for it, man. It's all part of life, and I don't feel in the slightest bit bitter towards almost all of them. I'm forgiving a couple of people still. I'm working on that, but that's my issue to work with. It's not their fault that I haven't forgiven them.
No, I like that. And eventually all heroes get the treasure. So again, we'll split this a little bit. What is the treasure that you won in poker, or you're after in poker? And what is the treasure that you've won or you're after in life? So in poker,
I think poker can be almost whatever someone wants it to be. But for me, it's very much been a spiritual journey. It's been a journey where I faced a lot of my own demons. You know, you're sitting at the table. You have to be, if you want to be very, very successful, you have to be the kind of guy that gets tilted when this happens. I'm the kind of guy that gets really sad when this happens. I'm the kind of guy that gets anxious when this happens. And then you have to be like, well, why does that happen? Okay, well, this happened in my childhood and now it's making me think like this, or this happened to me a couple of years ago, it's making me think like this. And there's 10,000 different iterations of those experiences when somebody's playing poker. So for me, the thing really to get out of poker, apart from the financial freedom to be able to go out and try and change the bigger world, is to become the best version of me that I can.
And life?
Life's such a game. I mean, everything's a game. Obviously, poker's a game, but it's like these series of games where you can set the rules for yourself. You can decide, okay, I'm going to play this game, or I'm going to play this game, or I'm going to play this game. And the game in which I think is most fulfilling is the game of how much good can I do in this world? How much joy can I bring to the world? And how much suffering can I reduce in the world? And you can almost see it as selfish in a way, because you are doing what's best for you. But I think that the idea of selfless and selfish is almost antiquated. It's old fashioned. It doesn't make any sense, because the most selfish thing you can do is be selfless, you know? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's one of the beauties of the human experience, is that the best thing you can do is be kind to other people. And there's a quote that really stands out to me that I know almost off by heart. I'm going to paraphrase it because he messed up a bit, but there's I think it's by I think a guy called Burgess, where he says, if I could get you to do one thing, it would be to realize that when you get to the point where you really feel highly motivated towards keeping your virtues, and by virtues he means like being honest, being kind, being good, you'll discover quite quickly just how extraordinary a life is meant to be. And I think that's so true. Like I had a great life before when I was traveling, playing poker, and I was just winning money. I was meeting people. I was, indulging in life's experiences. But there's nothing more rewarding than helping somebody that's in need and watching them grow into a person that isn't in need, and grow into a fully autonomous being that is now strengthened and is grateful for what you've done. Or even if they're not, that's completely fine. And for me, that's the biggest buzz. That's better than taking MDMA. That's better than taking LSD. It's addictive almost. It feels really good. And I think that the world is slowly waking up to that there's all of this selfishness and greed and shaming people and guilting people. It's not doing them any good. And the people that do that are just living quite sad lives in general.
Well, you don't live a sad life, Charlie. It's a beautiful way to end it. I've really enjoyed our time listening to your hero's journey. Thank you very much. You don't go anywhere, but I just want to say goodbye on behalf of the Run It Once team here and the audience.
Yeah, man. And it was an absolute pleasure speaking to you. You're extremely talented in being able to dig out very personal details about a person without making them feel like you're kind of overpressing the boundaries. So that is a true talent.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.